Billionaire offered his daughter a choice of elegant wives. She chose the maid whose love was priceless. Hello, bestie. Please stay with me as I unfold this interesting romantic story. If you enjoy the story, please support us by subscribing to this channel and hit the notification button for more. Thank you. Grab your popcorn, sit back, relax, and enjoy this story. The silence was a physical presence. It was the silence of 5 years without Chioma's laughter, without her sharp wit that could disarm him in an instant, without the gentle hum of her piano. Her absence was the one problem his wealth could not solve. The click-clack of small sandals on marble broke his reverie. Moremi, his 7-year-old daughter, appeared in the doorway, clutching a well-loved stuffed giraffe. She had her mother's eyes, large, curious, and seeming to see right through to the soul of things. "Daddy, are you sad again?" she asked, her voice small in the cavernous room. Bayo turned, his stern features softening instantly. He knelt, opening his arms. "No, omo me, my child. Not when you are here." He pulled her into a hug, breathing in the scent of her coconut hair oil. "Where is Auntie Chioma?" "Finishing my hair," Moremi said, pointing to her head, where the beginnings of intricate braids were tied off with simple threads. She said she'll finish after she makes your tea. Auntie Chioma, the maid, a quiet, efficient woman from Imo State who had arrived in the chaotic aftermath of Chioma's passing. She was part of the background, a reliable fixture who ensured the machine of their household ran smoothly. Bayo was grateful for her competence but had never looked beyond it. Later that night, tucking Moremi into bed, he felt a pang of guilt. She needed a mother. She needed more than a succession of nannies and a grieving, workaholic father. She needed what Chioma gave her in stolen moments. Braided hair, lullabies in Igbo, a comforting presence during thunderstorms. But Bayo, in his loneliness, dreamed of a partner, a queen to sit beside him, someone who belonged in his world of high-stakes deals and high-society galas. An idea, both extravagant and simple, began to form in his mind. He would find a wife, but the choice would not be his alone. Who better to judge a woman's heart than the child who would call her mother? The idea, once planted in Chief Bayo's mind, took root with the fierce speed of a Lagos rainstorm. He would find a wife, but the selection would be his daughter's. It was a decision that felt both profoundly sentimental and impeccably logical. Who better to judge the character of a potential mother than the child who would receive her care? The task of compiling the list fell to his fiercely efficient personal assistant, Tund. Summoned to the study, a room of dark mahogany, leather-bound books, and the faint scent of old money and cigars, Tund received his instructions with a perfectly neutral expression, though internally, his mind was reeling. "Tund, I require a list," Bayo began, steepling his fingers. "Women of a certain caliber, refined, accomplished, from good families. They must be elegant, intelligent, and presentable. Most importantly, they must be good with children. Mormi's opinion is paramount." "Understood, sir," Tund replied, his tablet already in hand. "Any particular criteria? Age range? Professional background?" "They should be appropriate," Bayo said, a vague term that Tund knew how to interpret. "They should be young enough to bear more children, but old enough to possess maturity and poise. They should have careers or social standing that complemented, not diminished, his own. They should be, in essence, the female equivalent of a luxury asset, beautiful, valuable, and a testament to his own status." Tund retreated to his office and began his work. This was not a search for love. It was a corporate merger of life and legacy. He scoured society pages, business journals, and the invisible grapevine of Lagos elite. Within days, a dossier was prepared. 6 women, the very best of the best. Bayo reviewed the files, each one more impressive than the last. 1. Adeobi Okonkwo, 38. Executive Vice President at a major oil and gas exploration firm. First-class degree from LSE, MBA from Harvard. Flawless pedigree from a family of renowned academics and judges. Her photo showed a woman with a confident, almost challenging gaze, dressed in a sharply tailored dress of Nigerian silk. She was a strategic choice, a merger of two powerful empires. 2. Folake Adeyemi, 35. Founder and CEO of a groundbreaking fintech startup recently valued at over $50 million. Named one of Forbes Africa's 30 under 30. She was brilliant, driven, and represented the new face of Nigerian ambition. Bayo saw in her a kindred spirit, a fellow builder. 3. Nekaduru, 32. A renowned socialite and fashion icon. Her family's wealth was generational, built on vast real estate holdings. She was a regular feature on the pages of Stylemania and This Day Style, her beauty and taste legendary. She moved through high society with effortless grace. She was the arm candy every billionaire was supposed to have. 4. Zainab Sani, 36. The daughter of Alhaji Sani, Bayo's oldest and most formidable business rival. A potential union would be the talk of the continent, a staggering corporate détente that would create an unstoppable commercial force. She was a shrewd businesswoman in her own right, managing her family's hospitality arm. It was the most audacious, game-theoretical choice. 5. Toke Awambi, 33. A celebrated TV personality and host of the most-watched daytime talk show in the nation. Her smile was a national treasure, her eloquence unmatched. She was charming, connected, and possessed a media savvy that could only burnish the Alade brand. She was the public relations dream. 6. Kayamika Ease, 37. A dedicated philanthropist who sat on the boards of several major charities. From a deeply respected old money family, she was the epitome of elegance and social conscience. Marrying her would be a statement of legacy and benevolence, cementing his name not just in business, but in the annals of societal good. A fine list, Bayo murmured, a satisfied glint in his eye. He saw not 6 women, but 6 different futures for the Alade dynasty. Proceed. Invite them to a garden party. Make it clear this is a personal gathering, and ensure Moremi is the center of attention. Meanwhile, in the sun-drenched kitchen, Moremi was helping Chioma shell beans for Moin Moin. The little girl was curious about the sudden flurry of activity in the house. Auntie Chioma, why are there so many people coming? Is Daddy having a meeting? Chioma smiled, her hands moving with a practiced rhythm that Moremi tried to mimic. Not a meeting, NNEM. Party. Your father is inviting some important aunties. Will they be nice? Moremi asked, a subtle worry in her voice. New people, especially important ones, could be intimidating. Chioma stopped her work and placed a gentle hand on Mormi's. They will all be very nice to you, she said wisely. But you remember what I tell you? The true test of a pot is not when it is empty, but when it is on the fire. Moremi nodded, only half understanding the proverb. Will you be there? I will be making sure the small chops are crispy and the juice is sweet, Chioma said. I will be in the background. But if you need me, just look. I will be there. She pulled a small, wrapped peppermint from her pocket and gave it to Moremi. For being my good helper. As the invitations, thick, cream-colored cardstock embossed with the Alade family crest, were dispatched across Lagos, each recipient understood the unspoken message. This was not just a party. It was an audition for the role of a lifetime. Wife to a billionaire and stepmother to his heir. The city's elite buzzed with anticipation, each of the 6 women already envisioning herself as the new queen of the Ikoyi mansion, completely unaware that the truest test would be administered by a quiet 7-year-old shelling beans in the kitchen. The day of the garden party dawned bright and clear, the Lagos sun a benevolent eye overlooking the manicured perfection of the Alade estate. By mid-morning, the air hummed with a different kind of energy than the usual Ikoyi calm. It was the buzz of high-stakes performance. The garden had been transformed into a stage. Flawless emerald lawns were dotted with white linen-draped tables, each bearing towering floral arrangements of imported orchids and roses. A string quartet, discreetly positioned near a bougainvillea arbor, played a soft, classical melody that wove through the murmur of arriving guests and the clink of fine crystal. The scent of blooming jasmine and expensive perfume was intoxicating. Chief Bayo stood near the entrance, a picture of power and poise in a flowing, impeccably tailored agbada of navy blue oak with silver threadwork. He greeted his guests with a firm handshake and a measured smile, his eyes constantly scanning, assessing. Moremi stood beside him, a beautiful, silent doll in a stunning yellow dress from a Milanese children's boutique. Her small hand was tucked in his, and she performed her role with a quiet gravity, curtsying and murmuring "Good afternoon, ma" to each new arrival. The women arrived not as guests, but as contestants, each making a calculated entrance. Adeobi was first, a vision of corporate elegance in a sharp, modern take on Iro and Booba made from deep green Dutch wax print. Her handshake was firm, her eye contact direct. "Chief Alade," she said, her voice a cool, confident alto. "What a magnificent home, and this must be Moremi." She turned, producing a sleek, gift-wrapped box. "A little something for you. I hear you're a very clever girl. This is a child-friendly tablet with some excellent educational programming." Her smile was efficient like a well-executed business proposal. Folake arrived next, her energy vibrant and modern. She wore a colorful, geometric pattern dress and immediately crouched to Mormi's level. "Hey there, superstar. I'm Folake. Your dad says you love building things. Me too." She launched into an engaging story about her first tech hackathon, speaking to Moremi with a respect that was both surprising and flattering to the child, though the concept soared far over her head. Neka made her entrance as if onto a catwalk. Dressed in a breathtaking, custom-designed Iro and Booba of gold-threaded oak, she was a symphony of elegance. "Darling, you look absolutely precious," she cooed at Moremi, her voice a melodic chime. She presented a large, exquisitely dressed French doll. "Look, she has hair you can really style, just like we'll do with yours when we go to my stylist in Paris." She offered a dazzling, camera-ready smile to Bayo. Zainab was regal and composed, her attire a modest but incredibly expensive-looking hijab and gown of lavender silk. Her gift was a delicate bracelet of cultured pearls. "For the young princess," she said, her voice serene, "to remind you that true beauty is found in grace and purity." Her interactions were polite, but her eyes held a calculating sharpness, viewing the afternoon as the first round of a complex negotiation. Toke, the TV personality, was all warmth and charisma. She swept in, her laughter infectious. "Kai, Chief, this place is even more beautiful in person. And Moremi, I feel like I know you already from all your dad's stories." She didn't bring a physical gift but offered a promise, pulling out her phone. "Look, this is my friend, the head of Waka Wow Kids TV. She'd love to have you on the show. We could bake cupcakes on national television." She made everything feel fun and exciting. Kayamika was the last, her aura one of gentle grace. She wore a simple but elegant dress of cream-colored lace. "Thank you for having me, Chief Alade," she said softly. She turned to Moremi. "Your father tells me you have a very kind heart. That's the most important thing." She spoke of the charitable foundation she ran and how she would love for Moremi to one day help her choose toys for the children's hospital wing, appealing to Bayo's sense of legacy. Through it all, Moremi was polite, a perfect little lady. She accepted the gifts, nodded at the stories, and gave her rehearsed thanks. But her large, observant eyes missed nothing. She saw how Adeobi's attention flicked back to her father the moment the gift was given. She saw Neka's slight frown when a breeze threatened to mess her perfect hair. She felt the distance in Zainab's serene smile. And moving through this glittering scene, a study in quiet efficiency, was Chioma. In her simple, starched maid's uniform, she was a splash of muted gray in a garden of vibrant colors. She was invisible to the guests, a part of the scenery. She directed the wait staff with subtle hand gestures, ensured the champagne flutes were perpetually full, and whisked away empty plates. But her eyes, soft and watchful, never left Moremi. She saw the slight droop in the girl's shoulders after 20 minutes of intense, performative attention. From across the lawn, she caught Mormi's eye and gave a small, almost imperceptible wink. Mormi's posture straightened instantly, a tiny, genuine smile touching her lips. Chioma saw the artifice, the calculated charm, the way the women engaged with Moremi as a means to an end, the handsome, powerful man standing beside her. She saw the fire beginning to heat the pot, and she waited, her heart aching with a protective love she had no right to claim, ready to step in the moment the pot showed any sign of cracking. The performance was magnificent, but she alone was attuned to the well-being of the one audience member who truly mattered. The garden party had settled into a rhythm as smooth and polished as the surface of the champagne flutes. Laughter, light and artificial, tinkled alongside the string quartet. The 6 women had established their territories. Adeobi and Folake were engaged in a spirited but polite debate with Bayo about Lagos infrastructure, their intelligence on full display. Nneka and Chioma offered elegant commentary, while Zainab observed it all with a quiet, strategic intensity. Toke had captivated a small circle with a hilarious anecdote from her show. Moremi, momentarily forgotten, stood near the refreshment table. She was holding the French doll Nneka had given her, its porcelain face and elaborate dress feeling alien in her arms compared to her worn stuffed giraffe. She was performing her duty, a beautiful, silent accessory, but the constant attention had been exhausting. She longed for the simplicity of the kitchen with Chioma, shelling beans and listening to stories. It was at this moment of quiet childhood yearning that the equilibrium shattered. Nneka, the socialite, was making a point to Bayo about a recent art auction. To emphasize her story, she swept a graceful, manicured hand through the air. The motion was too wide, too sudden. It connected sharply with the elbow of a passing waiter who was carrying a tray of freshly poured fruit punch. Time seemed to slow. The waiter stumbled. The tray tipped. A glass, filled to the brim with crimson liquid, slid from its surface as if in a dreadful ballet. It sailed through the air in a shimmering arc before crashing squarely into Mormi's chest. A collective, sharp gasp cut through the music. A grotesque, dark red stain exploded across the front of the beautiful yellow Milanese dress, spreading rapidly. Shards of crystal clattered to the marble patio floor. Moremi stood frozen, shock and humiliation washing over her small face in a cold wave. Her eyes welled with instant, hot tears. The beautiful doll, now spattered with punch, fell from her numb fingers with a clatter. Nneka's hand flew to her mouth. "Yuo! Oh my goodness!" she exclaimed. But her horror was not for the child. It was for the social blunder, the disruption of the perfect scene. She took a quick, instinctive step back from the splatter, protecting her own gold-threaded osook. What a clumsy mess, these waiters, she muttered, before remembering her audience. She forced a tinkling laugh, aiming for levity. "Don't fret, darling. It's just a dress. Daddy will buy you 10 more from Harrods. It's nothing." The other women reacted in a symphony of misplaced priorities. Adeobi frowned, her mind already calculating the disruption to the afternoon's agenda. "Well, need a cloth," she said briskly, but made no move to find one. Folake winced in sympathy but looked awkwardly at the sticky pool forming on the marble, a logistical problem. Zainab offered a serene, "Alhamdulillah, you were not cut by the glass," but her posture remained rigid and distant. Toke immediately turned it into a potential TV moment. "Oh, bless. Don't worry, sweetie. Spills happen to everyone. We could do a whole segment on it." She reached for her phone, perhaps to capture the adorable mishap. Chioma offered a gentle, "Poor thing," but her focus was on Bayo, gauging his reaction, her philanthropic concern feeling practiced. Chief Bayo took a half-step forward, his paternal instinct kicking in. But he was a man who solved problems with contracts and acquisitions, not with spilled punch and a crying child. He was momentarily paralyzed, unsure of the correct protocol in this deeply personal chaos. "Moremi, it's all right," he began, his voice sounding strangely hollow to his own ears. But for Moremi it was not all right. It was a catastrophe. She was cold, wet, sticky, and the center of a staring, pitying crowd. The beautiful party had turned into a nightmare. A small, choked sob escaped her lips. The performance was over. The pot was on the fire. And that was when Chioma arrived. She didn't sweep in. She simply materialized, as if she'd been anticipating this very moment. She didn't see the ruined designer dress, the judging eyes of the elites, or the social disaster. She saw only a frightened, humiliated little girl on the verge of hysterical tears. Without a word, she moved between the glittering women, her simple apron a flag of pure, practical purpose. She dropped to her knees on the wet, sticky marble, not caring about the punch soaking into her uniform. "Nnem, my child, Uo, don't cry," she whispered, her voice a soft, private shield against the staring world. Her movements were swift and sure. She used a clean napkin from her apron pocket and a glass of clean water from a nearby table, dabbing gently at the stain. "Shoo, it is nothing. See? The sun will wash it away. You are still the most beautiful flower in this garden." She created a bubble of intimacy in the very public space, her body blocking Morma's view of the onlookers. Her touch was familiar, comforting, and devoid of any judgment or annoyance. She spoke not of replacement or cost, but of immediate solace. Then, from the same magical pocket that held solutions to skinned knees and bad dreams, she produced a simple, wrapped peppermint sweet. She pressed it into Morma's palm, closing her small fingers around it. "Be brave, my love. This will make it better." The transformation was immediate. The tears stopped. Morma's breathing steadied. She looked into Chioma's kind, familiar face and saw safety. She saw home. She gave a small, shaky nod, her fist closing tightly around the sweet. Chioma rose, helping Moremi to her feet. "Come," she said softly, but firmly. "Let's get you cleaned up." She led the stunned child away from the wreckage, her head held high, ignoring the silent, watching crowd. The incident was over in less than a minute. The waiter, flustered, began cleaning the floor. The women, slightly shamed, tried to regain their composure and restart their conversations. But the damage was done, and it had nothing to do with the dress. Chief Bayo stood rooted to the spot, watching Chioma's retreating back. He had witnessed the entire scene in high definition. He had seen the empty performances of sympathy and the instant, selfless action of true care. He had seen the stark, undeniable difference between someone who saw a problem to be managed and someone who saw a heart to be comforted. The crack in his carefully constructed world widened into a chasm. The polished performances of the 6 elegant women now seemed exactly that, performances, and the only real, authentic, and loving act he had witnessed all afternoon had come from the person he had never once considered. The last of the luxury cars had purred away from the Okoye mansion, leaving behind a silence that felt heavy and used, like the air after a loud party. The grand garden, once a stage of vibrant performance, was now a graveyard of half-empty glasses and wilting orchids. The string quartet was gone, but the echo of their polite music seemed to linger, a ghost of the afternoon's artifice. Chief Bayo moved through the quiet house, his expensive agbada feeling suddenly like a costume he was eager to shed. He found Moremi in her bedroom. She was already in her pyjamas, sitting on the edge of her bed and staring at the collection of extravagant gifts lined up against the wall. The tablet, the pearl bracelet, the elaborate doll. They looked like artifacts from a strange and distant world. Chioma had just finished rebraiding her hair for the night, her touch gentle and final. She had changed out of her stained uniform into a simple house dress. She gave Bayo a small, respectful nod. "She is all ready for bed, Oga," she said softly, before quietly slipping out of the room, closing the door behind her and leaving father and daughter alone. Bayo sat on the bed, the mattress dipping under his weight. He looked at his daughter, really looked at her. The perfect party mask was gone. In its place was a quiet, thoughtful little girl who seemed older than her 7 years. "Moremi," he began, his voice softer than usual, stripped of its boardroom authority. He reached out and took one of her small hands in his. Felt incredibly fragile. "You were wonderful today, a true princess. All those aunties, they were very impressed with you." Moremi nodded, her eyes still on the gifts. "They were very shiny, Daddy." Bayo smiled. "Yes, they were very shiny. and very clever and very beautiful. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Now, my wise one, I need you to help me with a very important decision. You met all those aunties. Which one did you like the most? Which one? He took a breath. Which one should come to live with us? Which one should be your new mummy? He released her hand and leaned back slightly, giving her space. His mind was already running through the possibilities. He anticipated her choice. Perhaps Toke, with her fun energy and TV stories. Or Folake, who had spoken to her like a grown-up. Maybe even Neka with her glamorous promises of Paris. Moremi didn't look at the gifts. She didn't hesitate. She turned her head and met her father's gaze with a startling directness. Her large, calm eyes were clear and certain. Auntie Chioma, she said. The name was spoken not as a suggestion, but as a simple, undeniable fact. The air left Bayo's lungs. It was as if she had spoken a word in a language he didn't understand. He stared, his brain struggling to process the two syllables. For a long moment, the only sound was the hum of the air conditioner. Auntie Chioma? He finally repeated, the words feeling foreign on his tongue. A nervous, disbelieving laugh escaped him. Moremi, my love, no. Those women, the aunties at the party, they are important. They are doctors and CEOs and… He floundered, gesturing vaguely towards the door, towards the world of status and influence. Auntie Chioma is. She works for us. She is our help. He said it not with cruelty, but with the absolute, unshakable certainty of his worldview. It was a statement of fact, as true as saying the sky was blue. Morma's face did not change. She did not get upset or frustrated. Instead, she looked at him with a patience that was profoundly humbling, as if she were the adult explaining something simple to a confused child. They gave me big presents, Daddy, she said, her voice quiet but firm. She pointed to the doll. But they were like the shiny box the doll came in. The box is very pretty, but you throw the box away. You keep the doll. She paused, letting him absorb the metaphor. The presents were for you, so you would see how nice and rich they are. So you would like them. Bayo felt the first fissure in his certainty. He opened his mouth to protest, but no sound came out. Moremi continued, her small voice gaining strength as she articulated a truth she felt in her bones. When the drink spilled, she said, and Bayo's mind flashed to the image of the crimson stain spreading on yellow silk. I was messy and I was scared, and the shiny aunties. She shook her head, a faint frown of remembrance on her brow. They didn't want to get their beautiful clothes dirty. They were annoyed. Auntie Chioma got on her knees on the wet floor. Her apron got dirty. She didn't care. She looked down at her own small hands, then back up at him, her eyes glistening with earnestness. She knows I get scared of loud noises, so she sings that Igbo song until I fall asleep. She knows I don't like ugwu in my soup, so she picks it all out before she gives it to me. She holds me when I cry for Mummy, and she cries a little bit too, because she misses her also. Her voice dropped to a whisper, but each word struck Bayo's heart with the force of a hammer. She treats me like her own daughter. That's what a mummy's heart does, right? It's not about what her clothes look like. It's about what her heart does when you are messy and sad. The final piece of his carefully constructed world. A world built on portfolios, social standing, and calculated mergers shattered. The crack that had appeared during the punch incident widened into a yawning chasm, swallowing his preconceptions whole. He saw his own blindness with devastating, painful clarity. He had been evaluating CVs and social credentials, while his daughter had been evaluating hearts. He had asked a child to choose a mother, and she had chosen the only woman who had been acting like one all along. Tears, hot and entirely unfamiliar, welled in Chief Bayo Alada eyes. They were not tears of sadness, but of profound shame and awe. This small child, this piece of his heart walking around outside his body, possessed a wisdom his billions could never buy. He pulled her into a fierce, crushing embrace, burying his face in her freshly braided hair. His shoulders shook slightly. You are right, Omo me, he whispered, his voice thick and choked with emotion. You are wiser than your father. You are absolutely right. He held on to her, the last and greatest gift from his first love, who had just guided him directly to his second. The choice was made. The king had spoken, but the queen had chosen. The morning after the garden party, the Alade mansion felt different. The lingering scent of perfume and flowers had been replaced by the familiar, comforting aroma of akara and fresh pap frying in the kitchen. The opulent silence was now just quiet. To Chief Bayo, it felt like the world had been wiped clean, offering a blank slate he had never known he needed. He stood in his study, but the leather-bound books and the mahogany desk, once symbols of his power, now felt like relics of an old life. He couldn't focus on the stock reports blinking on his monitor. All he could see was the image of Chioma on her knees, the look of utter love on her face as she comforted his daughter. Summoning her felt like the most momentous decision of his life, more nerve-wracking than any multi-billion naira acquisition. He instructed a junior housemaid to ask Chioma to see him. He then paced the room, rehearsing words that suddenly felt inadequate. When a soft knock finally came at the door, his heart hammered against his ribs. "Come in." Chioma entered, wiping her hands nervously on the simple fabric of her well-worn dress. Her head was slightly bowed, not in submission, but in habit. She stood just inside the door, not presuming to come closer. Her face was a mask of polite apprehension. The grand party was over. Now was the time for accounting. Had the small chops been underseasoned? Had the champagne been too warm? Was she to be blamed for the waiter's clumsiness? "Oga, you sent for me?" she said, her voice soft with unease. "Chioma, please," Bayo said, his own voice unusually gentle. He gestured to the pair of armchairs by the window, not the formal chairs facing his desk. "Sit down." The instruction itself was alarming. She never sat in this room. She perched on the very edge of the indicated chair, her back straight, her hands folded tightly in her lap, ready to spring up at a moment's notice. Bayo did not retreat behind his desk. He sat in the chair opposite her, leaning forward, his elbows on his knees, reducing the immense social distance between them with his posture. He looked at her, really looked at her, perhaps for the very first time. He saw the gentle strength in her hands, calloused from work. He saw the quiet dignity in the set of her shoulders. He saw the intelligence and kindness in her eyes, which were currently clouded with worry. "My daughter has made a choice," he began, the words feeling both heavy and light. Chioma's face fell almost imperceptibly. She understood. The audition was over. She nodded slowly, her eyes dropping to her hands. "Oh, sir. She will have chosen a fine madam. They were all very impressive." She said the word impressive with a subtle nuance that hinted at its superficiality. "Adeabi madam is very strong. Folake madam is very clever. She will be happy." She was already resigning herself to serving a new mistress, her heart breaking quietly for the little girl she loved as her own. "She did," Bayo said, his voice low and intense. "She chose you." The words did not compute. Chioma stared at him, her mind blank. She blinked, once, twice, waiting for the punchline, for the correction. When neither came, a violent tremor went through her. She shot to her feet as if electrocuted, the chair scraping harshly against the polished floor. "Me? Oga? No." The words were a gasp, torn from her. "It is a mistake. A joke. You must have misheard her." Her voice rose, laced with a panic that was entirely new. "I am your maid. I am nobody. I am from the village. I cook your food and scrub your floors." She was backing away, toward the door, as if the very idea was a physical threat. "This is not. It is not possible. The other madams, they are for this life. I am not. I am not." She was terrified. Terrified of the absurdity, terrified of the hope that was treacherously trying to spark in her heart, terrified of the monumental shift this represented. Her world was ordered, its boundaries clear. This suggestion was an earthquake. Bayo stood, but he did not approach her like a master. He moved slowly, his hands open at his sides, like someone approaching a frightened animal. "Chioma," "Look at me," he said, his voice soft but compelling. She forced her terrified eyes to meet his. She expected to see mockery, or perhaps pity. She saw neither. She saw only raw, unwavering sincerity. "My daughter says you treat her like your own daughter." He took a small step closer. "She says you see her. Not my money, not my name. Her." His voice cracked with emotion. "In one afternoon, she saw what I have been too blind to see for 5 years. You have the one thing all my wealth cannot buy, a true and loving heart." He took another step. He was close to her now, close enough to see the tears beginning to well in her eyes. When that punch spilled, he continued, the scene vivid in his mind. "Those impressive women saw a problem, a stain, an inconvenience. You saw a frightened, humiliated little girl. You got on your knees. You got dirty. You comforted her." He shook his head in awe. "You have been doing that every single day since my wife died. And I never saw it. I never thanked you for it." He was now directly before her. He didn't touch her, but his presence was a plea. "You are not nobody," he whispered, the title feeling like an insult now. "You are the woman a 7-year-old queen has chosen to be her mother. And I have learned that her judgment of character is infinitely better than my own." He took a final, steadying breath, offering not a command, but a vulnerable request. "I am not asking my maid to marry me. I am asking Chioma, the woman who saved my daughter's heart, to please consider saving mine too." The tears that had been welling in Chioma's eyes overflowed, streaming down her cheeks in silent rivers. The panic and fear did not vanish, but they were washed away by a tidal wave of emotions she had spent 5 years locking away. Love for Moremi, respect for this powerful, grieving man, and a deep, profound longing for a family. The walls around her heart, built from duty and social hierarchy, crumbled under the weight of his genuine, humble words. She didn't speak. She couldn't. She just stood there, in the Billionaire's study, and wept, her entire world Chongshin Anpai rearranged, around a single, impossible, beautiful question. The news, as Chief Bayo knew it would, exploded through the Lagos elite like a scandal. Whispers slithered through golf clubs and champagne brunches. "Bayo Alade is marrying his housemaid." The sentence was uttered with a mixture of disbelief, derision, and sheer fascination. Theories abounded. The woman was a cunning witch who had used juju. The billionaire had lost his mind. It was a temporary lapse in judgment he would soon correct. Bayo's phone rang incessantly for 2 days. Old friends called with concerned advice. Business associates called with thinly veiled curiosity. Some of the women from the garden party called with a frosty, wounded pride. He listened politely to a few, then instructed Tund to screen his calls. He stood firm. To a close friend who asked, "Bayo, nawa for you oh? Why?" He simply replied, "My daughter chose a mother. She chose wisely." The conversation ended there. The wedding preparations were a quiet, joyful affair, entirely devoid of society page editors and event planners. The garden, once a stage for performance, was now a sanctuary for a genuine celebration. Moremi and Chioma, hand in hand, became the co-architects of the day. They chose decorations not from a catalog, but from the market, vibrant, locally grown sunflowers and lilies that filled the air with a sweet, natural perfume. They chose the menu, not canapes and champagne, but a lavish spread of local favorites: jollof rice, moin moin, suya, akara, and plenty of chapman and palm wine. Chioma's family arrived from the village 2 days prior. Her parents, elderly and dignified in their simple, best clothes, were initially awestruck into silence by the grandeur of the Ikoyi mansion. But Bayo welcomed them not as in-laws from a different world, but as family. He greeted her father with a respectful bow and her mother with a warm embrace. Moremi immediately attached herself to Chioma's mother, calling her grandma with an easy affection that made the old woman's eyes shine with tears. The morning of the wedding, Chioma did not dress in a secluded bridal suite. She dressed in the room she had once shared with Moremi, with the little girl and her own mother helping her. Her gown was not a white European confection but a magnificent, deep blue oak, intricately embroidered with silver thread, a color that spoke of royalty, elegance, and depth. It was a dress that honored her heritage while celebrating her future. Moremi, her flower girl, wore a smaller version in a bright, joyful yellow. Bayo, watching from the garden where a small arch of sunflowers had been erected, felt a nervousness he hadn't felt in decades. He was not wearing a tuxedo or a flamboyant agbada, but a simple, elegant senator outfit made from the same blue oak as Chioma's dress. His closest friends, the ones who had stayed by his phone, stood with him, their teasing smiles masking genuine happiness for their friend. The aisle was not a carpet but a path of flower petals Moremi had helped scatter. The music was not from a string quartet but from a talented young Jew musician Chioma's cousin knew. And then she appeared. Chioma walked towards him on the arm of her father, a man who had spent his life tilling the earth, his head held high with a pride that had nothing to do with wealth, and Bayo's breath caught in his throat. He had always seen the maid. Now he truly saw the woman. The dress, the setting sun catching the silver in her headpiece, the serene, radiant smile on her face. She was breathtaking. She was not a replacement for Chioma. She was a new, unexpected, and perfect chapter. But his eyes were drawn to the small figure walking just ahead, scattering petals with intense concentration. Moremi, their daughter, the architect of this impossible, beautiful day. She looked back at Chioma, then at him and beamed, a smile of pure, unadulterated triumph. The ceremony was short and heartfelt. They exchanged vows not of obedience, but of mutual respect and partnership. Bayo promised to cherish her kindness and strength. Chioma, her voice clear and steady, promised to love and honor him and to always be a mother to Moremi. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, a cheer went up not from a crowd of socialites, but from Chioma's family, their joy unrestrained and infectious. The reception was a feast of laughter and heartfelt toasts. Chioma's uncle told embarrassing childhood stories. Bayo's best friend spoke of seeing a light return to his friend's eyes that he thought was extinguished forever. Moremi gave a speech she had written herself. I picked Auntie Chioma because her heart is big, and now it's ours. And our house won't be quiet anymore. There was not a dry eye in the garden. As the music started and Bayo took his new wife into his arms for their first dance, he looked around. The silence of the Ikoyi mansion was gone forever. It was replaced by the rich, melodic sound of Igbo being spoken freely, by the uninhibited laughter of people who didn't care about stock prices, by the patter of Morma's feet as she danced with her new grandparents, and by the deep, contented rhythm of his own heart. He had started his search looking for a queen to share his throne. His daughter had led him to the woman who had already built the home around it. And as Chioma smiled up at him, her hand warm in his, Chief Bayo Alade knew, with absolute certainty, that this was the best deal he had ever made.